My hands were trembling. I turned the family photo face down and placed it on the nightstand. Sitting on the edge of the bed I had slept in for 31 years, I listened to Vanessa's sobs drifting up from downstairs, accompanied by my mother's comforting murmurs. In the photo I had just turned over, we were all smiling. Vanessa's college graduation, with Mom and Dad beaming proudly, Vanessa radiant in her cap and gown. And there I stood, slightly to the side, not with a genuine smile from the heart. A sharp knock rattled the door. Without waiting for a response, my father pushed it open. Today, his face seemed more deeply lined, his complexion gray and unhealthy. "How could you do this to your own sister?" My father's voice was barely contained, but trembling with anger. "Dad, what are you talking about?" Even as I asked, I felt a cold dread churning in the pit of my stomach. "Downstairs. Now." My father turned abruptly and left, expecting me to follow as a matter of course. In the living room, my mother sat perched on the edge of the sofa, dabbing her eyes with a crumpled tissue. Vanessa paced back and forth between the coffee table and the fireplace, her designer heels clicking accusingly against the hardwood floor. Her fiancé James stood with his arm around her shoulders whenever she paused, his face a mask of stern disapproval. "What exactly am I being accused of?" I asked, wrapping my arms around myself. Vanessa turned toward me, mascara smeared beneath red-rimmed eyes. "My engagement ring is gone," she shrieked. "The 3-carat diamond that's been in James' family for 4 generations. The accusation hung in the air between us." "Why would you think I had anything to do with that?" My voice sounded steadier than I felt. My mother cleared her throat. "You were the only one home yesterday when Vanessa took it off to do the dishes. And we found your little savings stash too," my father added, never meeting my eyes. $2,500 hidden in a shoebox in your closet." For a moment, my mind returned to childhood. Vanessa and I climbing the massive oak tree in the backyard, laughing as we reached for the highest branches. Then the image shifted to Vanessa's graduation from Princeton, our parents' faces glowing with pride while I stood in the background, community college brochure stuffed in my purse. Later that night, as I served the dessert I'd made from scratch, I had whispered my dream of pastry school, only to be met with polite smiles and quickly diverted conversation. "That money is for pastry school," I said, my throat tight. "I've been saving for years." Vanessa scoffed, tossing her perfect hair. "You've been talking about pastry school forever, but you've never had money before. We should check pawn shops in the neighboring towns," James suggested, pulling out his phone. "It's a distinctive craftsmanship. Edwardian-era platinum with—" "Wait," I held up my hands. "You seriously think I stole your ring and pawned it?" Mom and Dad exchanged a look that sliced through me, a look of disappointment, but not surprise, as if they'd always been waiting for me to reveal my true, lesser nature. My father squared his shoulders. "You have 48 hours to pack your things and leave this house." The decree landed like a physical blow. I searched each face for any sign of doubt, any crack in their certainty of my guilt. There was none. Rain began to tap against the windows as evening approached. The warm oak tones of our family home suddenly felt cold and foreign. With the strange calm that comes only in moments of absolute crisis, I opened my wallet and removed the small family photos I'd carried for years. I placed them deliberately on the coffee table. "I didn't take the ring," I said, my voice steady. "Someday you'll realize that." Mom's tissue couldn't catch her fresh tears. Dad's face hardened further. Vanessa watched with a strange mixture of triumph and uncertainty as I climbed the stairs alone to begin packing. In my room, I stared out the window at the gathering storm. The rain fell harder now, mirroring the tears I refused to shed. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my cousin Daniel. "Whatever you need, I'm here." I pressed my forehead against the cool glass and whispered to the empty room. "Where do you go when the people who are supposed to love you unconditionally believe the worst about you?" Downstairs remained actively noisy. Phone calls being made, rumors already spreading, my reputation dissolving in real time. I pulled my suitcase from the closet and began the systematic dismantling of the only life I'd ever known. They had made their choice. And now, with the weight of their betrayal pressing down on me from all sides, I had to make mine. Rain pelted my shoulders as I dragged my suitcase through puddles that mirrored the dark sky above. The wheels caught on cracks in the sidewalk, jolting my arm with each obstacle, as if the universe itself was creating roadblocks. When I reached Daniel's apartment building, I paused under the meager shelter of the entrance overhang. Water dripped from my hair onto already soaked shoulders. "It's me," I said, my voice barely audible over the storm. Daniel's apartment was small and cluttered with military memorabilia and textbooks from his night classes, but it had a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. The couch had been transformed with fresh sheets, a folded blanket, and a pillow that looked newer than anything else in the apartment. "You're soaked," Daniel said, taking my suitcase. "Get changed, then we'll talk." When I emerged in borrowed sweatpants and an oversized Air Force t-shirt, Daniel was waiting with 2 mugs of tea on the coffee table between us. "Start from the beginning," he said, and there was no pity in his voice, just steady resolve that somehow made it possible to speak. That morning, my phone buzzed for the 30th time. I'd ignored 29 notifications, but this one demanded attention. My boss's name flashed on the screen. I answered with a hand that wouldn't stop trembling. "Charlotte, I know you're a good employee, but the Morgans are our biggest donors for the community fund, and Vanessa's Fance's family owns half the commercial property downtown. We can't have this kind of publicity. I'm sorry." The call ended. Daniel looked up from his laptop, his expression darkening as he read my face. "They didn't just take your home. They're making sure you have nowhere to go." That night, I scrolled through social media, each swipe revealing new devastation. Vanessa's tearful post had garnered hundreds of sympathetic comments. Betrayal and theft within my own family. The person I trusted most has broken my heart. I kept scrolling back through years of photos. Annual Christmas card pictures, Vanessa's graduations, family vacations. In every image, the pattern was unmistakable. Vanessa at the center, mom and dad flanking her, and me slightly apart. Not quite excluded, but not fully included either. "They've been preparing to believe the worst about you for years," Daniel observed over my shoulder, handing me a mug of decaf. "Look at how they're positioned. It's like they've always seen you as separate. Family is supposed to be who you can count on most," I whispered. "Sometimes the family you choose matters more than the one you're born into." Then his phone buzzed. "That's Emma. She's bringing groceries." An hour later, Daniel's small apartment hosted an unlikely gathering. Emma from the store brought not just groceries, but gave me hugs that felt like lifelines now. Daniel's friend Marcus offered connections at the warehouse where he worked as supervisor. His girlfriend, Tara, mentioned her cousin needed weekend help at a local diner. The first few years were a blur of graveyard shifts and textbooks. Each dollar earned was a step away from them. Dishwashing at the diner, night shifts at the warehouse, opening my first account at the credit union. Just my name on it. 3 weeks later, a letter arrived at Daniel's apartment on heavy cream stationery. My father's law firm's letterhead prominent at the top. It demanded I cease harassment of the Morgan family, threatening legal action if I continued attempting contact. "But I haven't even tried to contact them," I whispered. "They're building a narrative, making themselves the victims." That night, sleep eluded me. Behind my closed eyes, memories surfaced. Vanessa at the kitchen sink, laughing about something James had said, slipping off her ring to wash dishes. I bolted upright, sudden clarity washing over me. The ring. I remembered now. Vanessa had set it on the counter's edge. I'd watched it wobble, watched it slide into that gap between the counter and the wall. I'd meant to mention it, but Mom had called me to help bring in groceries. My finger hovered over Dad's contact on my phone. One call could end all this. One simple explanation. Slowly, I set the phone down. They wouldn't believe me anyway. Tomorrow I'd pick up extra shifts at the diner. Next week, I'd follow up on the warehouse application. And someday, I'd build a life so solid that their absence would feel less like an amputation and more like a distant scar. The warehouse break room fell silent as my coworkers leaned in. Their coffee cups paused midway to lips. "Well?" Marcus asked. I pulled out the official letter and my eyes scanned the first paragraph. "I got it. They promoted me to shift supervisor." The room erupted in cheers that felt genuine, not the polite, measured approval I'd grown accustomed to at family dinners. Marcus clapped me on the shoulder with calloused hands, and Janice, who'd trained me 9 months ago when I'd stumbled in desperate for any job, wrapped me in a hug that smelled of cardboard and cinnamon gum. "Nobody deserves it more, Charlotte. From dishwasher to warehouse supervisor in less than a year. That's real grit." The apartment key felt substantial in my palm as I climbed 4 flights of stairs. "Home sweet home," I murmured, pushing open the door to my studio apartment. It was smaller than my childhood bedroom, with one window overlooking a brick wall. But the first month's rent and security deposit had come from my own earnings, saved dollar by dollar over half a year. No family loans, no conditions attached. Taking a deep breath, I smoothed open the crinkled newspaper on my lap. Vanessa's perfect smile beamed up at me from the society page. "Local attorney to wed investment banker in spring ceremony," the announcement headline. James stood beside her, his arm possessively around her waist. The replacement ring glittered on her finger. For 31 years, Christmas had meant Mom's sugar cookies and Dad reading. 'Twas the night before Christmas on Christmas Eve, no matter how old we were. It had meant Vanessa and me hanging ornaments on the tree, fighting over who got to place the star on top. A knock at my door saved me from drowning in memory. Daniel stood in the hallway holding a small tabletop Christmas tree in a plastic pot. "Thought you might need this. Time to make new traditions." He didn't mention the newspaper or ask why my eyes were red. This is what real family does. They know when to speak, and when silence is the greater kindness. My apartment transformed slowly, one personal touch at a time. A wall of Polaroid photos grew beside my futon, snapshots of people who'd entered my life after everything fell apart. The calendar hung beside them, January 15th circled in red marker. Next to it, the confirmation email for my night classes in business basics, printed and tacked up as a daily reminder. When I reviewed my bank statement at my small folding table, I allowed myself a rare moment of pride. 9 months of careful budgeting had yielded consistent growth in my savings. Not enough for tuition yet, but a foundation. Evidence of possibility. To Charlotte, 6 voices cheered in unison, raising glasses above plates of half-eaten diner food. Emma had organized this birthday gathering, my first since the implosion of my old life. "Open my next," Daniel urged, sliding a small package across the table. Inside was a gift card for professional clothes. "For when you start taking over the business world," he proclaimed. Each gift reflected thoughtful attention to who I was becoming. A cookbook from Emma, pastry tools from Marcus, quality knives even from Janice, who barely knew me outside of work. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice steadier than expected. "A year ago, I had a bigger house but a smaller life. Thank you for showing me what real support looks like." Daniel raised his coffee mug. "To the strongest person I know." The hardware store's fluorescent lights cast everyone in an unflattering glow. I was comparing different brands of spackling paste to patch a hole in my apartment wall when I spotted him, my father, examining electrical switches 3 aisles over. When he turned slightly, time stopped. The achingly familiar profile. The same wire-rimmed glasses. For a second, his eyes flicked toward me, a flash of recognition crossing his face before he deliberately turned away, continuing his shopping as if I were a stranger. I waited for the collapse, for the pain that would drop me where I stood. But my hands remained steady on the spackling container. My breathing, even. I completed my purchase and walked to my car. Later I told Daniel it hurt less than I'd expected. The realization arrived like a revelation. Their emotional hold was weakening. Strangers can't break your heart twice. Tell us about a time you overcame a significant professional challenge, the woman on my laptop screen said, her voice slightly distorted through my cheap speakers. I was dressed in the blazer from Daniel's gift card, sitting at my folding table now draped with a tablecloth to look more professional. When I lost my previous position unexpectedly, I had to rebuild my professional network from scratch. I started at entry level in a new industry, identified mentors willing to teach me, and earned 3 promotions within 9 months. I didn't mention family betrayal or false accusations. Some details don't belong on resumes. The pastry school application sat completed on my table, a small portfolio of dessert photos tucked inside. Creations from my tiny kitchen, each representing hours of practice after long warehouse shifts. My scholarship essay began. True strength isn't avoiding hardship, but finding purpose within it. When the notification appeared on my phone, accepted, followed by an offer of partial scholarship, the quiet celebration felt more meaningful than any elaborate party. I touched the framed pastry school acceptance letter beside my bed. 2 years ago, they said I'd never amount to anything. I whispered to my empty apartment. For the first time in years, I smiled all the way to my eyes. The last nail went into the wall, and I hung the framed acceptance letter where I'd see it first thing every morning. My tiny apartment finally felt like a launching pad rather than a fallback position. My phone rang, an unknown number lighting up the screen. I almost let it go to voicemail, probably another credit card offer, but something compelled me to answer. Charlotte. That voice sent electricity through my body. Mother. 2 years of silence shattered in a single word. My heartbeat thundered in my ears as I struggled to find my voice. Yes. We need to talk to you. We found the ring. I arrived at Riverdale Coffee 20 minutes early, slipping into the corner table that offered a clear view of both entrances. The chair's wooden back pressed against my spine as I positioned myself with the wall behind me, a defensive posture, but necessary. My phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. Parked across the street. 1 word and I'm inside. I'm fine. Just stay close. I typed back. When I looked up from my phone, they were already walking through the door, 3 figures moving as a unit, just as they always had. Dad's shoulders sloped more than I remembered, Mom's hair showed more gray, and Vanessa's designer coat hung looser on her frame. 4 years had carved itself differently on each face. They spotted me and faltered briefly before approaching. No one moved to hug me. Good. I wouldn't have known what to do with my arms anyway. Charlotte, Dad said my name, sounding foreign in his mouth after so long. You look well, he said matter-of-factly. Vanessa continued. I gestured to the empty chairs. Sit. The vinyl cushions squeaked as they arranged themselves opposite me. Mom immediately fidgeted with her napkin, folding it into smaller and smaller triangles. Dad's throat worked with unspoken words. Vanessa's left hand trembled slightly, her wedding ring catching the overhead light. You said you found the ring. My voice came out steadier than expected. Dad cleared his throat. Yes, during last month's kitchen renovation. Behind the counter, in that gap near the sink. He couldn't quite meet my eyes. Vanessa leaned forward. I remember now. I was cooking that night, took it off because the dough was sticky. I must have knocked it off the counter. Her voice cracked. We rushed to judgment. Mom whispered, her napkin now a crumpled mess. Those words hung heavily in the air between us. That's right, I said. Normal life bustled around us in the coffee shop, while silence filled our table. Baristas calling out orders, the hiss of espresso machines, strangers laughing together. We can be a family again, Vanessa burst out, tear tracks already marking her makeup. Now that we know the truth, I took a slow sip of my coffee, setting the mug back on the table with deliberate precision. From my shoulder bag, I removed a manila folder and placed it between us. This is the damage your accusations caused me. Dad flipped it open. Inside were newspaper clippings with my name splashed across the local gossip column. Screenshots of Vanessa's social media posts about betrayal within my own family. a termination letter from my former employer citing character concerns, and bank statements showing my climb from zero to stability. Dad blanched. We can help you get back on your feet financially. I let out a bitter laugh. I've been on my feet for years without you. We made a terrible mistake, Mom said in a small voice. I need my sister back, Vanessa pleaded, reaching across the table. I didn't extend my hand to meet hers. I'm not the same person you threw away. Time stretched between us as they absorbed this. I watched comprehension dawn in 3 different ways. Dad's jaw tightening, Mom's shoulders sagging, Vanessa's eyes widening. Since I last saw you, I've been promoted twice, supervised 16 people, completed my pastry certification with distinction, and have my own apartment. I did all of this without a single dollar or a word of encouragement from any of you. Each achievement landed like a stone between us. Dad shifted in his seat. You didn't need us after all. His words revealed how little he understood. I needed you, I said quietly, meeting his gaze. I just learned to live without you. Mom dabbed at fresh tears, these seeming genuine for once. Vanessa leaned forward eagerly. So you forgive us, right? You'll come to Sunday dinner? Mom's making pot roast this weekend. I took another deliberate sip of coffee, feeling their anticipation build. 4 years ago, I would have jumped at this opening, grateful for any crumb of acceptance. Forgiveness and reconciliation aren't the same thing, I said finally. What does that mean? Vanessa's voice rose slightly. It means I decide the terms of our relationship now. No Sunday dinners yet. Coffee once a month. Phone calls maybe. We start small and see where it goes. I met each of their gazes in turn. But we're family, Mom protested. Family doesn't evict family on suspicion. Family doesn't destroy reputations without proof. Family believes in each other. You'll need to earn that word back. I stood, dropping cash on the table for my coffee. I shouldered my bag and walked away, the rhythmic click of my boots against the tile floor punctuating my exit. Through the window, I saw their reflections watching me go, 3 faces wearing identical expressions of dawning realization. I was no longer theirs to summon or dismiss. Daniel straightened as I approached his car. How did it go? I slid into the passenger seat and buckled my seatbelt before answering. They found the ring, I said. But I found myself. My phone vibrated in my pocket. I pulled it out to find an email notification glowing on the screen. The job offer in Texas, officially extended. A door opening to a future where I was defined by where I was going, not where I'd come from, complete with relocation bonus and health benefits. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Good news? I smiled, the first genuine one of the day. The best kind of life choice. I smoothed my napkin across my lap as my mother refilled my water glass for the 3rd time. The late afternoon sun slanted through my apartment windows, catching the edges of the framed pastry-school certificate on my wall. 6 months of careful, measured family reconnection had established a rhythm I could almost predict. Mom's nervous chatter, Dad's cautious questions about my job, Vanessa's over-eager compliments on everything from my throw pillows to my haircut. Charlotte, these lemon bars are divine, Vanessa said, brushing crumbs from her lips. You've always had such a gift. I nodded my thanks, the words, unlike you, hanging unspoken between us. Despite the ring's discovery and their tearful apologies, something essential remained broken. Their sudden interest in my culinary talents felt like discovering water in the desert after dying of thirst. Welcome, but far too late. Your apartment is so cozy, Mom said, her eyes darting to the compact kitchen where I'd maximized every inch of counter space. I recognized the familiar pattern. Her praise always carried a hidden asterisk. It suits me, I replied, the firmness in my voice surprising even me. I made it exactly what I need. Dad cleared his throat, the sound I'd come to recognize as his preparation for broaching difficult topics. The hospital is looking for a new office manager and billing. Margaret heard about it from Susan Rivers. The pay is better than whatever they're giving you at that warehouse, and you'd be closer to home. Home. The word landed like a stone in still water, ripples of meaning expanding outward. Their home had never been truly mine, just a place where I existed in their shadows. I felt the weight of the sealed envelope in my desk drawer. The job offer from Holden Logistics in Austin, complete with relocation bonus and health benefits. The culmination of 6 months of late-night applications and video interviews conducted in my supervisor's office after my shifts ended. "Actually," I said, setting my glass down carefully, "I have some news." 3 pairs of eyes fixed on me with varying degrees of expectation. I'd carefully maintained our Sunday coffee meetings while declining dinner invitations, birthday celebrations, and holiday gatherings. Each boundary I'd established had been met with thinly veiled disappointment, each limit tested like a child pressing against a newly erected fence. I've accepted a position as Regional Logistics Manager for Holden Transportation in Texas. I start in 3 weeks. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the refrigerator's constant hum seemed to pause in recognition of the moment's wait. "Texas," Mom's voice rose an octave, her hand flying to her throat. "But we just found you again." "You can't be serious," Dad said, leaning forward. "After everything we've done to make amends." Vanessa's eyes filled with tears on cue. "You're punishing us deliberately. We've apologized 1,000 ways." And there it was, the immediate centering of themselves in my narrative. My opportunity, my achievement, my future immediately reduced to a reaction to them. 6 months of cautious reconciliation crashed against the rocks of their self-absorption. "This isn't about you." The words emerged with a calmness that belied the thundering of my heart. "This is about my career, my future. Your future is here, with your family," Mom said, reaching across the table for my hand. I pulled back slightly, just enough to maintain the physical boundary and the emotional one. My hands began to tremble, not with the old familiar anxiety, but something electric and unfamiliar. 6 months of measured smiles, careful nods, and swallowed responses surged upward like a tide I could no longer contain. My coffee cup clattered against its saucer as I set it down too hard. The sudden sound made Vanessa jump. "You didn't just accuse me." My voice broke free of the controlled politeness I'd maintained for months. My words came faster, louder, untethered from my usual restraint. "You condemned me without trial, destroyed my reputation, cost me my job, and threw me out with nothing but a suitcase." I stood abruptly, knocking my chair back. Mom gasped. I'd never moved so suddenly or spoken so forcefully in her presence. The Charlotte they knew didn't disrupt, didn't demand, didn't disturb the careful performance of family harmony. I strode to the window, my reflection showing flushed cheeks and bright eyes I barely recognized. Evening shadows lengthened across the parking lot as something long buried in me finally reached daylight. "Do you know how many holidays I spent alone?" My voice rose with each word, tears I'd never allowed them to see now streaming freely down my face. "How many achievements I celebrated without family. The first time I sold pastries at the farmer's market, I looked up expecting to see you, forgetting for just a moment that you weren't there, that you chose not to be there. I spun around to face them, these strangers who shared my blood but not my battles." My chest heaved with ragged breaths. For the first time in my life, I made no effort to appear smaller, quieter, more acceptable in their eyes. "You're not sad I'm leaving." The truth burst from me raw and unfiltered. "You're sad you can't control my forgiveness timeline." Dad's face hardened, then softened in a way I'd rarely seen. Beneath the anger, something like respect flickered. "We deserve that," he admitted, the words seemingly wrenched from him. Mom dabbed at her eyes, but for once her tears seemed genuine rather than performative. Vanessa stood, smoothing her designer jeans with shaking hands. "We don't deserve your forgiveness." "This move isn't about forgiveness or punishment," I clarified, feeling strangely lighter. "It's about building the life I want, not rebuilding what was taken." The conversation shifted then, tentative questions about my new position, the apartment I'd be searching for in Austin. When they finally left, the goodbye was subdued, but marked by a new understanding, perhaps the first honest exchange we'd had in years. I stood at my sink washing dishes, watching my reflection in the darkened window. Night enveloped the world outside while inside the warm lights of my small apartment, my creation, my sanctuary, illuminated the woman I'd become. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Proud of you. Texas won't know what hit it. I smiled, touching the frame of a photo taken at my pastry school graduation, Daniel, Emma, and the others who'd become my chosen family. Sometimes the bravest thing isn't staying to fight, but knowing when to walk away. Epilogue. New roots. I stood in my kitchen in Austin, sliding freshly baked maple pecan tarts into white bakery boxes. Morning light streamed through the window, catching on the certificate hanging on my wall. Charlotte Morgan Pastry Arts certification. The apartment smelled of butter and sugar, of possibility. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma. Sold out again this weekend. I smiled as I replied. 30 orders, had to turn people away. The weekend pastry business had started as a way to keep my skills sharp while working at Meridian Logistics, but word had spread. 3 weeks ago, the food editor from the local paper had called. The review would come out next week. The kitchen timer chimed, and I slipped on oven mitts to retrieve the last batch. These were for Mrs. Hernandez next door, who reminded me of what a grandmother should be. She told stories of her own fresh start in Texas 40 years ago, listened without judgment, and declared my pastries worth the extra insulin. My reflection caught in the oven door, shoulders straight, eyes clear. I barely recognized the woman who'd arrived in Texas a year ago, carrying more emotional baggage than physical belongings. The Christmas tree in the corner was small but perfect, decorated with ornaments I'd collected in my new life. No heirlooms, no history, just fresh beginnings. Daniel was flying in tomorrow, bringing a box of snow from Nebraska. So you don't forget your roots, he joked on our last video call. But my roots had changed, growing in new soil. Across my dining table were applications from 3 young women seeking mentorship. Through the Fresh Start program I'd launched at work, women facing family estrangement, domestic disruption, financial crisis. Women like I had been. Family isn't just who raises you, I told Jasmine, my current mentee, during our Tuesday lunch meetings. It's who lifts you up. Sometimes the hardest thing is letting go of who you thought they were. I sealed the last box with a sticker bearing my logo, a simple oak tree with spreading branches. Ironic perhaps, but the oak in our backyard had been the one place where Vanessa and I had found common ground. Some roots feed you. Others just hold you in place. Vanessa's letter sat on my counter, arrived yesterday since I'd read it twice. Unlike her previous communications, this one contained no guilt, no demands for instant forgiveness. Just photos of Mom's birthday, Dad's retirement party, their new puppy. At the end, a single line. We're learning to respect your boundaries too. Too little, too late maybe. But as Daniel said, healing happens on your timeline, not theirs. My suitcase lay open on my bed as I carefully packed specialty pastries and travel containers. Cranberry orange scones, chocolate bourbon pecan tarts, gingerbread cookies with lemon glaze. Not peace offerings, gifts. There was a difference. Tomorrow I'd fly back to Nebraska for the first time since I'd left. Not for Christmas. I was spending that with friends here, but for a brief visit before the holiday. On my terms. 3 nights in a hotel, not in my childhood home. My phone pinged with an email notification. A storefront was available for weekend lease in the Arts District, perfect for a pastry shop outgrowing my apartment kitchen. I'd run the numbers with my logistics salary and growing customer base. It was viable. Daniel's latest text appeared. Got approved for the transfer request. Texas by March if you'll have me. I smiled, warmth spreading through my chest. The universe expanding rather than contracting. The Nebraska air hit my face like a slap of memory as Daniel and I exited the rental car. Frost crunched beneath my boots, my breath forming clouds that dissipated in seconds, like so many things I'd once thought permanent. Ready? Daniel asked, carrying the pastry boxes. I nodded, straightening my shoulders. Just a visitor, not seeking a home. Mom opened the door before we reached it, her arms twitching as if to hug me, then falling back to her sides, respecting the boundary I'd established in our last phone call. Her hair was grayer than in my memory. "Charlotte," she said, her voice tight with emotion. "You look wonderful." Dad appeared behind her, nodding stiffly. Vanessa hovered in the living room doorway, uncertainty written across her face. Inside, the house smelled the same. Mom's potpourri, Dad's pipe tobacco lingering despite his quitting years ago. Familiar furniture, familiar photos. But the space felt smaller, compressed by time and distance. "Your hair is different," Vanessa offered. Yes, I touched the shoulder-length cut, styled with confidence rather than pulled back to disappear. "Texas is hot." Conversations stuttered and started around the dining room table. Mom mentioned church friends I barely remembered. Dad asked carefully about my job, genuinely impressed when I explained my role managing international shipping logistics. Vanessa's husband James was conspicuously absent. "He's working," she explained, twisting her wedding ring. "He says hello." I didn't believe her, but it didn't matter anymore. After dinner, I stepped out the back door into the cold night air. The oak tree stood silhouetted against the star-speckled sky, exactly where it had always been. But something was different. "It looks smaller," Daniel said, joining me with 2 steaming mugs of coffee. I accepted one, warming my hands around the ceramic. I used to think it touched the clouds. We stood in companionable silence, watching our breath mist and fade above us. Orion's belt gleamed clear and bright, the same stars I saw from my apartment balcony in Texas. "You know what's strange?" I sipped my coffee. I expected to feel something dramatic. Vindication, resentment, something. But mostly I feel peace. "Perspective," Daniel suggested. "Perspective," I corrected. "Now I can see the whole picture. Them, me, this tree." I gestured with my mug. "It's just a tree. Not a monument, not a metaphor. Just a living thing that grew as best it could with the light it was given." Daniel gently bumped my shoulder with his. "Like someone I know." Inside, I heard Vanessa's laughter, Mom's response, life continuing without me at its center. And that was okay. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Mrs. Hernandez about tomorrow's pastry order. The message included a photo of the Texas night sky with a caption, "Same stars watching over you there and here." I smiled at the coincidence, at the truth of it. Some connections remain unbroken by distance or time. Others are forged anew, stronger for being chosen rather than inherited. The family that raised me gave me roots. The family I chose gave me wings. But the strength to use those wings, that came from learning to stand alone. As I looked up one last time at the sky arching over my past and my future, I knew with quiet certainty that I was exactly where I needed to be, on the path I'd carved with my own hands, under stars that shone in both worlds.